get the previous speakers on stage as well, and take a little bit of time to answer some of your questions. So where is our catch box?
Here.
Ah, it's here. So I thought I saw some hands going up in the previous speakers, so where to begin?
Hi.
Can you stand up, say your name, what you're working on, and then...
Hi everyone, I'm a lawyer and I work with startups here in the Netherlands. And I have a question for Jeroen. Jeroen? Yeah, that's right. And it's maybe for everyone to understand the relationship between the new data protection regulation that is coming up, the GDPR, that probably a lot of us know, but startups should know, and smart contracts, because you just talked about it, so maybe we can go deeper into the discussion, because it's a big, I think, limitation for the blockchain, or a wall to be jumped, let's say. So,
okay, what would be the question?
Yeah, it's to go deeper into the discussion of what are the challenges of the blockchain with the new GDPR coming up in 2018.
Okay. So
I'll try to keep it short. The idea of the GDPR and current data protection legislation is that we have one person who's responsible for complying with the data protection laws. And the question is, when you are like in a closed private blockchain, it's not a problem because you can there's some form of governance possible. But when you look to like the really open Bitcoin blockchain, think of the idea that you're going to share personal data with each other. Yeah, who is responsible for complying with data protection regulation? Because who had data protection regulations says, okay, you have to take technical data security measures. If there is a data leak, you have to go to the central authority. So who's going to do it when there's going something wrong in an open blockchain when you are sharing personal data together? So I think that's a really serious issue, which, yeah, I don't see the solution yet.
all right, here, can you share it?
Maarten Boender of Spherium. I have a question to the topic, what steps are needed to support the ecosystem? You described the certification of blockchain solutions. There are many startups here. I certainly would not be able to pay for 5 months of lawyers' hours to get a certification for a solution. Will there be some kind of general rules or general principles of how to validate or certify blockchain solutions?
We did it for nothing, so...
Great initiative.
For us, it's also
so we all paid for it, basically, right? So we're yeah, cool. Yeah.
Now, also for us was, of course, really a way to learn, and yeah, and that's also a reason why it took so long, because when it's for free, the client's coming back and asking more and more questions. No, but I think it's, yeah, of course. So your question was, are there any general rules we can apply ourselves without paying for a certificate?
Or getting with a
Guidance,
smaller
yeah.
project, or guidance to get to a certification.
So what do you think about?
Well, I would like to have a certificate for the good solutions that we provide.
Yeah.
But is there going to be some kind of a framework or guidance or rule book or anything in the future, you think?
Yeah, I think so. We're trying to work on it, and we...
I think if there is a need, there will be.
Yeah, if there's a need, there will be, and we...
And if people are willing to pay in the end, maybe not 5 months of expensive lawyers, but if people are willing to pay, there will be.
Okay, but
Cool.
Yeah, simple as that.
would it be thinkable, since this was done anyway, to publish something for for teams startup teams, basically, maybe even collaborate with Startup Delta in that there are some basic guiding principles that you can follow that, well, increase your rate of success where you can follow.
Great idea. We should work on that. And when you use these guidelines, it will of course be much cheaper to get a certificate, because when you already did a lot yourself, then our advice is of course a lot smaller.
Yeah, when you can standardize the process.
Yeah.
But what is the value of a certificate of a lawyer firm? What does that say to me? I want to have a certificate from
Of an authority. Yeah.
authority of the AFM or the DNB or.
So you shouldn't ask us. I think you should have asked this question in the earlier session.
I'm not sure if the AFM provides certificates, but I think any type of certificate can add trust into the system based on the process that goes into it. If you put a lot of effort into proving something is trustworthy and is checked, I mean, a lot of smart contracts aren't properly audited. The same goes for a lot of, mortgage funds. So whether a certificate is a AAA rating or something like this, it all depends on the process that goes before providing the certificate, of course. So I think a certificate can be very useful in that it can help teams make better solutions. And so you can actually use the guidelines to develop a better solution. So in that way, if you develop software, I would welcome that certainly. Yeah, but so there are a lot of different thoughts, of course.
Data Protection Act, you get very high fines if you have a data leak, and if you can provide some evidence that you have done all things correctly, then you have saved a lot of money.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if what I'm going to say is very accurate, but I've been reading that the NEN, Nederlands Normalisatie Instituut, is giving out an ISO certification for blockchains. So I don't know the number exactly, but I think there's something coming from the Normalisatie Instituut regarding ISO. But
Okay.
Yeah, it's
It can also
true.
be. I see a question over there as well. Very tongue on the finger. Yeah. Oh.
Did my best. So, whenever you think about implementation of blockchain tech, or legal implementation of blockchain technology, whether it's a contract between private parties or whether it is in the healthcare system even more, isn't that an issue that in few years maybe the encryption which is used today can actually not be secure anymore, and that all the data that has been stored before can all of a sudden be just leaked?
So what's the exact question?
If that's a concern, that while developing this kind of solution, it's thought about if it's an issue, if it's a real issue, or if you think that it's actually going to be safe to put all of this information on the blockchain.
Oh, yeah, we have a computer scientist here.
Right,
So
what you're asking is can we trust cryptography? Yeah, and is cryptography going to be useful, or the existing cryptography be useful over 10 years? Well, I would say that the cryptographical experts say that it's not to be broken. It's very safe. It's mathematically very safe.
all right.
So I don't think that I don't think that's really I don't really think that that's the major topic of concern. That cryptography will not be sufficient.
And data protection is not. They say you have to take appropriate measures. So.
No, sure. It's not in order not to be liable under data protection regulation, but if you think about the healthcare implementation.
Of course.
It's a concern that maybe can arise, but I don't know. I'm not a technical person at all, so.
Yeah.
But you see,
I have
it's
no
like sometimes like the DAO it was hacked, but it's not because the cryptography is not good. There was a leak in the.
Yeah, no.
So you see, it's not the mathematics of cryptography that's a problem. That's a problem. That's not an issue.
I've heard that also cryptography and the mathematics that is behind also evolves with time, and I don't know. I thought that maybe, but better to know there is not.
Systems will have upgrades when they evolve. So also a lot of people in the cryptography field are working on the next level of cryptography. And of course, there's this big what if quantum computing happens and stuff like that. But that's all in a matter of time. That will is part of the evolution, I would say. And so, in the back there. Oh, yeah.
Annemieke Dirkes, Blockchain Projects. I just want to share some information. At the end of 2013, there is the installation of the European Privacy Seal. Online, as of January 2017, you can find the new demands to comply with European regulation for the new GDPR. So apart from legal compliance in other areas, for the privacy ones, you can find it all online, and you can do the application yourself.
Oh, great. Awesome. Yeah, sure.
My name is Robert. I work for a company called Anchorman. Question mostly regarded to the legal aspect. Let's assume for the sake of argument that you apply a dApp to Ethereum, which is inherently a public blockchain, and you run it through all the tests and make sure that it's legally binding and legally solid. But how then do you think a blockchain or this contract can provision for the fact that the blockchain in and itself is inherently bound to democratic processes? For example, if a majority of the miners or whoever is interested or working on the blockchain decides that all of a sudden it now has to work in a different way, for example, with zero-knowledge proofs being applicable to Ethereum, how does this influence the fact that all of the legally binding contracts on there now have to provision for a different system? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah?
I don't.
No, me neither. I think it's more a technical thing actually than a legal thing.
Yeah.
No, I can answer this one. It's exactly the same thing if tomorrow a coup happened by some party here and overthrow our governments and says, okay, we have new laws. Yeah. It's exactly the same thing. So it's you're basing on a system, right? And you say, what if that system is overthrown? It's the same thing. You can apply exactly the same logic to our state or to a network.
So then it all breaks down.
Then it all breaks down. It's like a risk you cannot really account for.
Okay.
I think we as lawyers look when we talk about smart contracts, we really think about transactions, and to keep it simple, transaction between two persons. Of course, I know when you look to smart contracts in Ethereum, most of the time it's not between two persons. But if you think of a smart contract between two persons, a legally binding contract. So we talked about it, offer and acceptance. And you put this offer and acceptance down in a smart contract. From a legal perspective, the only thing that's really important is the moment when when two persons have an offer and acceptance. So they agree on a certain topic. And they put it down in a smart contract. What if the smart contract doesn't work anymore the way you're supposed to do? Yeah, then you go to a judge and say, hey, we make this deal, it's not working anymore. So theoretical, of course, you can go to a court and say, we made this agreement, it's not working anymore, we have to change the smart contract or whatever. The point is, of course, it's really difficult to go to court because maybe you don't know who's at the other side. You don't know where he lives, where he comes from. Maybe the judge is dead. No, of course not. So that's how I, as a lawyer, look to such a problem. Think, okay, what's really the legal contracts? And it's not a contract, and that's of course a completely different discussion. Code is law. Okay, if you made the deal, code is law. If it's possible under the Dutch law? That's a serious question. maybe, but we're not sure about that yet. There's many discussion about that in the academic publications. So that's the way I look to a problem like this. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but hopefully.
Food for thought, right?
Martijn? Yep.
My name is Martijn. I'm a freelancer in the field. I have a question for Herman. I was wondering, let's say we trust the cryptography, we trust the entire system, we trust all the parties involved. You mentioned the DAO hack, some bug in the code. Does your compiler provide a solution for possible bugs in a smart contract?
Yes, you have to make sure that your compiler is bug-free. You see, what you're doing, you're actually replacing a coder of a smart contract by a compiler. So if you trust the high-level contract and you trust your compiler, if you're sure it's bug-free, then you can trust the resulting code. Yeah? But there's a lot of effort that has to be done into building a correct compiler. Building a compiler is not a trivial thing. I mean, you have to know the grammar of the source language, you have to know the grammar of the target language, you have to come up with the appropriate translation rules from the source language to the target language, yeah? And then you can put it into, let's say, a tool like Antler, and then you can generate your compiler. But there has to be a lot of effort, a lot of creative thinking put into finding the correct grammars, finding the correct translation rules, and then you have to have a very, very competent programmer, yeah, who can build you a bug-free compiler. Yeah? So this is not so. If you trust Ethereum, then it's okay. You say, okay, I trust the resulting code, yeah, and I trust the way Ethereum works. Then you have a good solution. Yeah. So I think the next generation programmers will be compiler builders and not direct coders of Solidity.
Yeah, it's the same when you look at the time when the Dutch became a trading nation. It was mostly because we could build ships faster and even 30 times faster because we had connected a sewing thing to a windmill, and making compilers creates an enormous time efficiency
yes.
to create better smart contracts.
Yeah.
And if you, I think also, I mean, this could actually be an ecosystem effort to help with that. I think because if as an ecosystem you can be the fastest ecosystem to build smart contracts, but also to evaluate, to audit, and to fix if something is wrong, then I think that's a very interesting environment for all kinds of problems to be solved, whether they are from our society or any clients.
There's one thing I want to add is, just because you have a nice language, that doesn't mean you're solving your problem. It's like, I can give you the grammar of my language, Olé, and then you can start writing smart contracts. But it's like, if I give you the grammar of the Dutch language, then you can write a novel in Dutch?
Nope.
No, you can't, because that means writing skills. Yeah. So you have to know how to use the language. Yeah. So when you're using a high-level language, it's not just knowing the language, but it's also being skilled, yeah, in writing good contracts. Yeah? But the important thing is that once you've written down the contract, the thing that you've written down can be validated by the domain expert. Yeah? And he can pinpoint possible mistakes. Whereas at the moment, when a Solidity programmer writes a piece of legal code, the legal expert has no idea if it's right or wrong. Yeah. Yeah? So the language is not sufficient. You also still have to be you have to have skills in writing smart contracts.
I think we can have the same conversation at the tech deep dive. So following question after that, I'm very curious to hear what Tim has asked as well. But first here.
My name is Eric. I'm a developer. I'm also have a question about your compiler. A lot of blockchains are experimenting with formal verification of smart contracts. It's a way to prove what an algorithm does mathematically. Does your compiler work with that? Is it possible to formally verify a compiler, or could it generate tools to formally verify the smart contracts that are generated?
It's a difficult one. Of course, my mode of thought is, if you trust your smart contract and you trust your compiler, then you can trust the resulting code. But if you want me to verify my own compiler, so prove its correctness, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Well, that's a general task that you could pose to any programming effort. Yeah, try to prove the correctness of a program. Now there are techniques to do that. Yeah, and they're very tedious and very subtle, and it takes a lot of time. But in principle, if you say I want to have an absolutely bug-free compiler, in principle that's possible. Yeah, because there are all sorts of verification techniques for programming languages, and that's also for languages that do compilers.
Right. Tim at the back, last question. Olé, yeah.
I personally do not really get why one would need a semantic language. You can easily write a paper and tell a legal expert how it works in legal terms. And basically you're only shifting the problem, because now he has to trust that what in my white paper is true. And the other way around, he has to trust that the compiler works as it should. And also a semantic language has some flaws. It's well, mostly a lot more inefficient, and in the case of smart contracts, especially public ones, it will probably also be more expensive to create that smart contract. So I really, I don't really get why one would need. If I write an application right now, most of them are not written in semantic languages either. So why would you need it with the blockchain?
Well. The reason why there are no semantic languages around for blockchain is that well, nobody's been able to do it yet.
I mean, not for many other applications neither. If I write an application apart from the blockchain, I still have to get lawyers to look into it. Yes, but they don't understand the language either. From aside from blockchain, so why do we need it for blockchain?
Well, you see, if you want to program, a smart contract is something you have to program on a blockchain. Yeah? And the code that I showed you for the Solidity code, yeah, that was actually I think that was the result of the 8th time that we looked at that Solidity code. Yeah, because it was the first time we wrote the code, it had bugs and whatever. It took a long time to figure out whether the code was right or wrong. But the important thing is the legal expert, even though the Solidity programmer says, well, you can trust my code, he can't trust the code because he doesn't understand it. And so, you see, the thing is, if you move the language up to a higher level, then the legal expert can understand the smart contract specification at that level. So, what's the purpose of this? It's making sure that you're making lesser mistakes. But that's what it's all about.
I actually think you will create more mistakes. If you look at high-level languages, they generally contain more bugs, they're more inefficient.
Well,
and again, with current...
If you're right, then we shall program an assembler.
Yeah, but that's still a lot more efficient.
Or in zeros and ones.
I think, Tim, this is something to discuss over drinks. I think if you generally look at software, there are many stakeholders involved. And particularly if you look at software in the enterprise environment or in accounting, most of the software is pretty complicated for normal people. Basically, the user interface and the processes and stuff like that. I don't want to say it sucks, but well, actually, it's quite difficult to work with it, and it keeps you from doing your main task. So I do think where you can at least build bridges in having different disciplines understand each other, that could contribute to the quality of software in a way. We also use UML language and stuff like that, so it's pretty normal in software building, especially larger enterprise systems, that you use all kinds of languages to basically interpret what you actually mean to accomplish. well, a big round of applause for our panels.